Okay, so the Sonic movie just premiered. A fan favorite character, Silver the Hedgehog. Just joking, y'all. It's Shadow the Hedgehog. That's right. It's our
I'm the
edge lord,
coolest.
Shadow the Hedgehog, is going to be premiering. And as much as I'm excited for this, there's a part of me that's a little bit concerned. There's
Why?
Okay, so this is a good one. I think as much as I love Shadow as a character, there are three main points that I feel like is kind of that might make it troubling to adapt Shadow, because Shadow, for those people who've experienced and know where Shadow's from, especially since Scott, you played Sonic Adventure 2, I played Sonic Adventure 2. OC may not be as familiar with the Sonic Adventure 2 story. People like Shadow for that story. And I just don't know if that story is going to work for this Sonic carnation. I think that there's incarnation. My first point, I guess, is that story itself has a lot. Well, for starters, it contradicts the lore that they've been previously established in this recent movie, right? Particularly that in this previous movie, they established something that the Chaos Emeralds have always been with the Master Emeralds, and it wasn't until after they got broken, or at least in this point in the movie, because it may be the Chaos Emeralds back before weren't with the Master Emeralds, but the point until the point we're with the movie, that it wasn't until the Master Emerald got broken, the Chaos Emeralds were separated. But if you know everything about Shadow and his story with the Space Colony arc, Shadow's always knew about the Chaos Emeralds. So it's like, for him, and he's used the Chaos Emeralds before in the past. So for that to be part of Shadow's story, and then they establish this, that's already an inconsistency within the lore itself. So that's already something where, in terms of setting up, they didn't really do a proper job for Shadow to come in. So that's like number one issue I kind of have with this. So that's one point, is if anybody has any.
Do you think that if it's because Marvel does this a lot, where they have a set lore that's already in place, but they don't really always follow it. They'll kind of take inspiration from it. And they'll take certain elements from it, but they never copy what was already done previously. So do you think that there's room for this incarnation of Shadow to come in with his own storyline that's good, that can maybe draw on previous Shadow storylines, but then not necessarily be an exact replica of what has already come before?
I think so. There's certain points they can and I guess that goes into my other thing with my next contention with it. There are certain things they don't need to have, but there are certain things that are hard trademark. Like Shadow and the Chaos, like Chaos Control is a Shadow thing. Like that's like, let's get that started, right? So Shadow being able to do that, maybe they can make it where Shadow discovers it, but it's not the same, because partially why even Shadow knew Chaos Control has to do a lot with his development. Like, he was developed to be able to find the Chaos Emeralds and to act on a particular revenge for Eggman's grandfather, which is where Shadow was created from. He was created from a guy named, if I remember, it's dang it, I forgot his last name. I mean, his last name's Robotnik, but I forgot. I think it's Ivo Robotnik. No, I think that's Eggman's name. My God. Point is, he was created by Eggman's grandfather to find the Chaos Emerald. So Chaos Control is part of his thing. And he has to understand what the Emeralds work. Not to mention, his story implies it follows through this thing called the Space Colony arc, which literally is designed to have Chaos Emeralds to make it work. So you can't have Shadow and not have the Space Colony arc, and the Space Colony arc doesn't work unless there's the Chaos Emeralds in it. I mean, you can change that, but it's kind of ingrained with the character that the point is he's ingrained to know how the Chaos Emeralds is part of how he works. So it's just weird for him it's weird to have a universe that doesn't have Chaos Emeralds previous for him to understand that. It just seems a little bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they're just gonna have to retcon the character overall. Like, if they already established these certain things, then yeah, it makes it very difficult to make that his origin story.
Yeah, and I guess that brings me to my other point, which goes back to the plot points of Sonic Adventure 2. I mean, I know Scott's played this, but Sonic Adventure 2 has so many different plot points going on, right? You have the plot point of Sonic being kidnapped or being arrested because people thinks he's Shadow and is causing all these havocs. You have a plot point where Knuckles, like Scott's mentioned in a recent video, that he's trying to find the Master Emerald, and the emeralds.
Well, he broke it, and then he essentially has to recollect the pieces to put it back together.
So you have that plot point. You have a plot point with Rouge the Batch, who they haven't introduced yet, who's supposed to investigate the whole Shadow thing because she works for the president, which, again, President of the United States is involved in this story, right? You have the plot point again with Shadow's past with Maria, which plays towards why he's against humans. You have the plot point of Eggman trying to get the Space Colony arc, and you have this plot point with Tails and Amy, who they also haven't introduced, being part of it. So if they do introduce Shadow, they kind of have to do the Sonic Adventure 2 story.
I mean, I as much as I would love that, I feel like they almost can't.
Lot.
Yeah,
they can't. Exactly. And it's like you can't. It's you.
I imagine that, like, hey, if you were like, hey, Chuku, you're gonna write the plot for the next Sonic 3 movie, what do you do? Like,
well, I would first of all, I would never have bring Shadow to begin with. That was the first thing.
These are the pieces of the puzzle that you have to work with. You have Shadow, and you have the storyline up until now. Like, what do you do?
I mean, the first decision is I wouldn't put Shadow to begin with. That's like that's the decision. There's somebody who made that decision and somebody who made agreement of that decision. And the director himself was like, "Oh, I'm excited to direct this." So he himself was okay with that decision. It wasn't like, so that's the thing. I wouldn't have pushed that decision yet.
So you would like cancel the you would like cancel the end credit scene, basically, like, hey,
I would have changed it. I would have changed a different end credit scene.
No, I'm saying, like, if they came to you today and they're like, hey, Chuku, we want you to write Sonic 3 the movie, given everything that has happened already in Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, what would you?
Yeah.
Well, if I had to write it, I can write it this way. All right. Well, the way I would write it was that I would change. I would not. What I could do, or at least this is the way I would write it, whether they accept it or not, it is what it is. I would write it in a way where it's like, I would do some of the Shadow story, but I won't do the full thing. Okay. So I would make it more that Sonic goes to his world, and as Sonic's going to his world, Shadow takes over the Sonic world. And that's where everyone gets confused. Because one thing I didn't like about Sonic Adventure 2 is how people confuse Shadow with Sonic when it's like, one's a blue hedgehog, one is a black hedgehog with red stripes. So it's like, as people in the Sonic universe so racist that they can't tell the difference between the two different hedgehogs. So what would make more sense is if Sonic is inside his world, discovering his world, and Shadow's inside the human world, everyone can confuse him for that. And then at some point, Sonic comes back to his world, sees Shadow, and then, goes to jail because they think he's Shadow, and then sees Shadow. He has that first confrontation and ends with a cliffhanger with Sonic losing to Shadow. And it's like, what's going to happen to Sonic? And I would keep it part 1 with that. Where part 2, we go more deeper inside the Space Colony arc and all that stuff. Because at that point with part 1, I can set up Rouge the Bat. I could set up Amy. I could set up all these other characters that are going to play bigger emotional impacts for the lore. That's what I would have done. I mean, if assuming that they give me that, that's the way I would take it. Okay. But I know this story is not going to go that direction. So that's my thing about it. So yeah, that's my other part with it. And I think that with these plot points, again, I mean, you don't need Amy, right? I can take away Amy. You can replace Amy with the human characters. That can work. But the point is, there's just too much story elements that for a kid's film, it's not going to work that well. So for them to even dance around with that idea, it's dangerous. And I know the argument could just be, don't do that idea, but that's the thing that makes people love Shadow. Like, we have to remember that people love Shadow. Shadow is not like, people don't really like, people like the character, but what made the character beautiful was the story. The story of Sonic Adventure 2 is what people really love about Shadow. So it's like, for them to not adapt that story properly, it's going to really hinder them. So, and that brings me to my last point, which is the tone. And I would have been okay. I would have, like, if Pixar was writing the film, I would totally be fine with it. I think Pixar could really play off the tone, because the Shadow story is a pretty dramatic story. It deals with a lot of deaths. It deals a lot of, you know, regrets, revenge, explosions, all this kinds of stuff. And I think that a story like, and you know, obviously Sonic is supposed to be for a kid's film. So I think Pixar can do a good job of dealing with those dramatic stuff, but make it innocent. But this Sonic universe, we can tell that they want the kids to laugh. They want to do a bunch of fart jokes and all this stuff. So to have, like, you know, Sonic fight Shadow, and then there's supposed to be a part where the island's supposed to blow up, and then Sonic and Tails are flossing while that's supposed to happen. It's not going to work in that movie. It's going to ruin the dramaticness of the Adventure 2 story that Shadow's part of.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's why I'm really skeptical about this.
This is just like Chuku's therapy session. He's worried about the next movie, understandably. It's not going to live up to your expectations. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
I think the story for Shadow is probably going to be changed dramatically, unfortunately. And yeah, I hope they do it in a good way. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, it's just, I guess after watching the last movie, it's unlikely for me in my case. Because because the thing with Knuckles, you can make that work because Knuckles' whole thing is just him getting the Master Emerald and being tricked by Eggman. But Shadow, that backstory, like, even if you want to take away certain elements, there's always the story of revenge of humanity because of the way he's been treated by humanity, and him trying to get him fighting him being the ultimate life form and needing some other, there's all those other elements that are more dramatic, and for it to be taken lightly is not going to work well in this film. It just won't.
Yeah. So there are definitely issues there. Another important aspect of this whole thing is the character of Dr. Eggman.
Yes, he's very important to this story, and the rumor has it that Jim Carrey might not be in this movie.
Exactly,
which is even a scarier point to this.
This is reportedly Jim Carrey's last acting that he's doing. He's retiring after this potentially.
Yes.
So that would be another aspect, is like, what do you do with that? And he you know, it's questionable whether his character lives or dies at the end of Sonic 2. But yeah, that's an interesting one. Is like, do they replace the actor?
They said they're not going to replace him.
I mean,
that's what they said.
Can you replace Jim Carrey?
Exactly.
I don't know. I don't know.
Exactly.
That's another big question mark on top of this whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's my thing about that. I mean, again, I want them to do well. I'm not here being like, oh, I want the Sonic movie to fail or whatever or whatnot. Like, I mean, again, when Shadow appeared, the whole scream, like, everyone was cheering, like, yeah, like, it was crazy. I didn't even know there was I thought there was only kids in my theater until Shadow appeared. And
really?
All the grown men scream. I was like,
all the grown men scream.
We didn't have any screams in our theater.
Oh, that's crazy.
Everyone was dipping already. They're like,
that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, my theater, it felt like I was in the Avengers film where it's like, you know, you see the Marvel movie where you see a clip of that certain character and everyone's like, oh my God, they introduced Spider-Man, they introduced Thanos, all that. Yeah. So,
I'm going to go brush up on my Sonic Adventure 2 lore and be sad with you, Chuku.
It's okay. I mean, again, we can only hope they do whatever they can with it. But yeah, the tone of it so far, I mean, unless they take a risk and say, we're going to really go for that darker tone and die down the humor, unless they do that, or they just don't do the story at all, which would suck, but it is what it is. It's really unlikely that this is going to really work.
Well, let's just hope for the best.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. But yeah, if you guys in the comments have different opinions, let us know, especially if you're hardcore Sonic fans, because I know you guys will know where I'm coming from. So if you can be like, well, actually, they can make the Sonic Shadow thing work, all this other stuff, let me know, and I'll definitely have a different opinion. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and
catch you in the next one. Peace.
Yep. Later.
Okay.